Hi, everyone. Welcome to this installment on Luna Arcana's YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us. I am talking today to a very favorite high desert person, Evelyn Zuel. Evelyn has written for Luna Arcana's last issue, issue 6, a really beautiful piece on Pluto's transit into Aquarius, which only happens, which it kind of like marks generations, happening every like 15 to 20 years or so. Is that correct, Evelyn?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
varies. Yeah.
Yeah. So Pluto just moved into Aquarius. So Evelyn wrote a really, really beautiful piece for our last issue on that. And in general, Evelyn's transmissions on astrology they are really accessible even to people who may not know anything about astrology because they tune into the essence of what's going on, and they're really insightful and intelligent. Um, so I'm excited to be talking to Evelyn today. Evelyn is a Libra Sun, Scorpio Rising, Taurus Moon, and she's a Korean American astrologer, consulting hypnotist, mystic, writer, and forever seeker of the greater universal mysteries. So you can understand why we are kindred spirits, kindred souls. Um, so Evelyn dove deep into the esoteric arts starting in 2012 when she surrendered to the divine for the purpose of healing her body from severe eczema and childhood wounds. The quest for personal healing exposed her to a myriad of spiritual practices along with multiple lifestyle changes. Evelyn went on to study astrology under Franciscus. Can you help me pronounce his last name so I don't butcher it?
Hubridge.
Hubridge. Okay, yeah, I would have totally butchered it. Franciscus Hubridge and Jack Taube of the Carol Reiter Astrological Foundation, and also with Penelope Sitter and Dr. Craig Martin and many more teachers. And she received her consulting hypnotist certification through the National Guild of Hypnotists in 2020. And Evelyn specializes in past life and age regression therapy, and has kept on with her studies in hypnotist, in being a consulting hypnotist in 2022, just continuing her education. As a tarot reader, Evelyn blends her astrological knowledge with the tarot in her interpretations and weaves their archetypes with planetary mythology. Evelyn is also the owner of former mystical and esoteric shop, the Mystic Parlor in Yucca Valley, which is here in the high desert, but has since closed the retail side to focus more on client consultations. Evelyn's greatest passion is guiding others on their path to self-knowing. She sees clients full-time at her home office while actively pursuing further education in psychology with the goal of becoming a licensed therapist. Hi, Evelyn.
Hi.
um,
Hello.
did you feel it's always a bit strange when people like read about you to you and you're just like sitting there going,
I know, I'm like,
awkward.
okay.
Yeah. So can we start by just talking a little bit about how you got into astrology?
Sure. I remember the first time I ever looked at an astrology book, which was when I was 9 and at the school library, and found it really fascinating. I read about Libra and it said something about, oh, Libras have a dimple on their right knee. And I looked at my knee, I'm like, oh my God, I have a dimple in my right knee. I don't know what that astrology book was, but clearly it was one of those sort of like pop astrology books, but in my younger age, it still piqued an interest of the idea of being able to determine something about me just based off of when I was born. And that stuck with me for quite a while. And then when I got older, in college, when I had graduated college, I was dealing with eczema, like severe eczema. I had dealt with eczema my whole life, but it got to its breaking point. And I was in the shower. It's difficult. It's hard to hear, but it was painful because of eczema, the nature of it. And I remember just kind of making a deal with God or whomever, whatever, and saying, this is not it. I'm not going to live this way. I can't. It's either, I get over this eczema or I'm out. I'm like, I'm not living this way in misery. So I guess it was more of a demand. And then afterwards, really shortly after, probably within days, I just started to find answers, and I started to get a roadmap for diet, uh, lifestyle, just answers for how to help manage my condition, noticing ingredients on lotions. And this was back in 2012. So I didn't have any interest or inclination around like wellness or eating well. I was definitely not a healthy person at that time. But that shifted my whole life from that point on. And something in me just got excited to learn about astrology again. I'd always had an interest in it, and I just made the decision that I was going to start learning it and taking it seriously. And then just from that point on, I've been essentially consuming as much information, podcasts, videos, YouTube videos on astrology from that point on. I was working in an office job where I was able to listen to whatever I wanted to listen to while I was working. So it was just literally 8 hours a day nonstop of consuming mysticism, even back in the day, conspiracies, which is not the same as it is now, but astrology, learning about all different methods of mysticism, spirituality, and what have you. So that's essentially what happened. That's how I got into it.
Yeah, I can resonate on so many parts, because I didn't have eczema, but I had psoriasis, and similar trajectory of just, these kind of wounds lead us to our kind of vocational pathways. So yeah. And can you tell me a little bit about how diving so deeply into astrology has affected your life, and how it affects the lives of your clients whom you see as, who you give readings to?
Yeah, well, it's definitely made me a more compassionate and empathetic person. I when you view people in life through the lens of astrology, which is a neutral science in and of itself, there's no, subjection other than from the observer. It helped me to understand other people on a much more holistic level, and myself as well. How it's helped me is one of the biggest things is validation. Number one is being validated for your lived experiences. Because when you get a reading from someone who's able to communicate back to you the internalized experiences that you have and how you feel about them or even think about them, it's just, it sometimes makes people like break down just for being seen in that way, in an objective, unbiased way.
Yeah. And that's been my experience with astrology as well, because I didn't really know much about astrology at all, apart from just, your sun sign and a little bit about Mercury, before I moved to the desert in 2013. And then it's just been this osmotic, like absorption of astrology now, where I'm certainly no astrologer, but as far as like looking at my own chart and being able to interpret and see patterns and see archetypes, and it's just like you say, just this understanding, this deep, it's like just seeing the trajectory of my life from birth till now. It's like, oh wow, like I can really see certain things, and it's just like I'm not just crazy. There's certain influences that are guiding my life and my decisions, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's really powerful. And sometimes I just want to tune it out, but once you know it, you can't unknow it.
Right.
It's like, oh
Right.
yeah, no, I know this archetypal energy that's moving through me right now. And it's, we're in communion with these bigger things. Yeah. And so the reason why Evelyn and I decided to have this conversation today is because obviously in the world, in the collective, there is a whole lot going on. And we are speaking June 2025. June, what's the date? June 12th, 2025. And so there is a whole lot going on right now. And I wanted to get Evelyn's insight, and I wanted to share Evelyn's insights onto the astrological insights. And even if you're not into astrology, or you don't believe in it, or you don't know much about it, I still recommend listening, because it will just give a broader perspective of the things that are happening right now, as well as historical precedents. So yeah, Evelyn, I mean, really just let's just start with speaking to from the archetypal planetary lens, what's going on and how it's manifesting in this physical earth realm right now.
Oh, well,
I mean, we can see how it's manifesting.
there's quite a bit. There's quite a bit going on. And I feel like, if you follow astrology, you may at some point get fatigued by how much an astrologer will say, well, there's a lot going on. There always seems to be a lot going on. And that's just true, because that's life. There's always so much happening every day that exists. However, there's quite a bit. Yeah, it's not a calm, quiet sort of time that we're in. There's a lot of shifting happening. Astrologically, just from that perspective, a lot of the planets are moving into new signs. So even just that in and of itself creates a little instability and shaky ground. Just even considering for your own self and your own life, when there's a shift, something changes, or there's a new phase or era that you're entering, it's just a little ungrounded from the very beginning points as you begin to get your steady footing in this new way of perceiving. So, Uranus, the planet of chaos and change, is going into Gemini, which is an air sign, and I'll break down more of what all that means. Jupiter, which is the planet of expansion and growth, philosophy, belief systems, just entered Cancer, which is a water sign. Pluto, the planet of the underworld, just entered Aquarius, which is an air sign. What do we have? Saturn also this year shifting into Aries, which is a fire sign. So all of these large, and also Neptune as well, shifting into Aries. So, that's those planets that I just named are slow moving planets, aside from Jupiter. Pluto, Neptune, Uranus all take many, many, many years to go through one zodiacal sign. So just whenever any one of those planets, Pluto, Uranus, or Neptune, shifts signs, is it's like a generational change. It's a generational shift, or it's a cultural shift in some way, shape, or form. So to have all of those cultural and generational planets shifting means that there really is a whole other era that we are moving into this year in general. that's going to change the way that we connect and communicate with each other. Neptune, which is dreams, spirituality, the healing, health, mysticism, the way that we navigate those themes for ourselves is shifting. Pluto, which is the underworld and bringing things up to the surface. Also, deep trauma healing is shifting. So I guess the archetypal generalization for all of this is be comfortable with change. I don't know. Be as flexible as you can, be adaptable. A lot of the changes of, for instance, Uranus and Pluto into the air signs equates to our intellect and how we are conceptualizing, understanding, learning, communicating, verbalizing what we know and how we know those things. And it's interesting to see when you pull out and watch the cultural shifts, for instance, like a trend, like word trends that come in and out, or even the way that we use sentence structures, the way language is used goes through these massive shifts through time. And we can see them through the planetary connections. So yeah.
Yeah, and for instance, Pluto and everything that we're seeing right now that's happening in tech, AI and everything, that's such a
Right.
Pluto and Aquarius signature.
Right.
And just like, can you speak to a little bit about then the last time Pluto was in Aquarius?
Oh, yes. Well,
Monumental shifts in the world.
huge. It was the um, well, it was right after the United States of America was born, so to speak, birthed. Which is this, if we think back to the origin of this country and the purpose of its foundation, which was freedom for all to have their ability to believe in and just have the freedom of intellect, intelligence, the freedom of belief, the freedom of speech, the freedom to like intellectually explore ranges that had not been done before, was cut off by the church. Freedom of religion in that way as well. So it was kind of, and also, of course, more than just that, the foundation of this country was built on slavery and on the backs of like brown people and the indigenous. So Pluto moving back into Aquarius is, I guess, a lot of those things are coming back up for us to work through again. It's not all one. Astrology, when it comes to like the signs and planets, they govern and rule over a lot of different areas of life. So yes, while Pluto is the planet of the underworld, and oftentimes in your birth chart will show like significant places of trauma around where Pluto is or exists, it's also regeneration and evolution and how you navigate the rebirth process. So for instance, right, like Pluto in Aquarius is the sign of, we see generally it'll be the sign of humanitarianism. It's science, it's scientifically minded. It's like the mad genius, the mad scientist, not of this era. It's also equated to alien-esque like ways of existence. It is also groups of people and connection and how we commune. So there's a strong association with community and collectivism with Aquarius, which, if we think again back to the foundation of this country, was a bit of that, like the spirit of, creating a new community or a new organized way of existing amongst each other. So you know, there's a lot of shifting happening with just how we relate to and equate with our own community. And hopefully we come back more to our local connection. Aquarius is also the larger network. So like think the internet even. And Pluto coming in to change that, how we have been navigating our human connections with one another through the internet, through social media. I think I'm seeing a lot of people shifting away from social media and realizing the harm that it does and how it creates a facade of connection and not a true, genuine, emoting connection, but then also at the same time, seeing how it has allowed people to connect with one another from different parts of the world. So in general, it's going to change in that way of how we utilize these tools. You mentioned AI, so artificial intelligence is wrapped up in Aquarius as well, because it's beyond the human form also. So Aquarius is like beyond man, or what human can expand into or become. And being an air sign, which is of the mind and intellect, then Pluto and Aquarius also brings in this beyond human form, beyond the human body, going into the ethers, bringing our consciousness into this collectivist place of existence, which, you know, my prediction is that by the end of Pluto and Aquarius, we will see people uploading their consciousness to a cloud, whether it's through ChatGPT, for instance, which you can do already. You can create a chat bot that's based off of your persona, your personality, who you are, and your ideas and your beliefs, and then have it just speak for you as you.
Your literal avatar.
Yeah, yeah. So it's beyond human. It's living, it's the death of the body or the physical form and the reemergence of consciousness in a new existence that we have yet to see beyond sci-fi movies.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm having so many, I mean, we could just carry on talking about AI, but we're not here for that today. We'll we'll have another drop in and record our conversation about the AI thing, because there's so much to say on that.
Yes.
Yeah. And also, yeah, I mean, just seeing the shifts, just the acceleration in the last 12 months, alone in AI. And also wanting to name that the last time Pluto was in Aquarius was when the French Revolution happened. So that was, again, and the kind of principles of the French Revolution are liberty, equality, and brotherhood. And, they were overthrew the corrupt royal family and chopped off their heads, and the French Republic was born. And we also had the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, which is essentially the first bookend of what we are, well, not that there's a bookend to the tech evolution, but, it was just when it began. It was like the beginning of technology as we know it coming into the world. The elemental energy of technology, the consciousness of technology coming into the world.
Right.
So yeah, so it's, just we're back in this space of the next iteration of that. So with everything that's going on in the politically, globally, in this country and elsewhere, yeah, just I'd love for you to speak to some of the bigger energies that are unfolding. And it's all very activating for us right now as we witness what's going on.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot, of course, politically happening in the United States and all over the world, of course, that is associated with the United States and the policies, military advancements and things like that. And Pluto, I love that you brought up too and mentioned the French Revolution for last time that Pluto was in Aquarius, because Pluto literally equates to power. It is power. So atomic power, power in general, oil, gas, but just in general, the idea and concept of power as an archetype and how it fuels and generates movement and action. And with it being an Aquarius, which is such a communal, like you're mentioning, like the brotherhood, community, togetherness, unification, is I bringing the power back to the people. It is bringing back the collectivist mentality or ideology of more power in numbers. And you know, we're quite divided right now. One thing that brings people together more than anything is a common enemy. But you know, when that enemy does a really good job of creating little divisions amongst communities, whether it's family units, community groups, or even on the larger scale of nationalism, then, you know, then that's where we have these like kerfuffles and butting up against each other. But at the same time, it's all ideological, rather than practical or logical. And Pluto going into Aquarius, which it will be in there for the next, I'm always really bad at keeping these numbers in my mind, but so until 2044, essentially, we will see a huge tide change when it comes to how we form groups, collective groups, activism for change, and humanitarian like connection, I suppose. And then with Uranus, the planet of change and chaos, moving out of Taurus. So it's been in Taurus for the last 7 years, I believe. Let me just double check and get my facts straight. So let's see, it entered 2018. So yeah, about 7 years or so. Taurus is the sign of land, fertility, the earth. It's connected to the earth very much so. Values, assets. In mundane astrology, it's also connected to like real estate and money and value, femininity, the feminine principle, beauty, art. And Uranus coming in to change all of that. We, from 2018 until now, we see huge like waves of immigration, migration amongst people throughout the world, also within this country, even seeing how people became more disconnected and dissociated from the land that they were on or connected to, and seeking out a certain kind of freedom to move wherever they wanted to move or the location that they were at. So Uranus and Taurus, I certainly equate it to all the like the population changes, shifts from one location to another, the big shifts in real estate, Airbnbs coming in to change the way that we interact with home and housing. And also just like this sort of concept that you as an individual person, I think this is very American though, to have this kind of perception where we feel like we have the right to go anywhere we want in the world, and that we should be welcomed, or we can just like travel to any country, any place, any location, which, you know, is a little bit of that disconnect too of like the land itself. It's not all bad though. There's also connections that happen between many different types of people all over the world as well through Uranus and Taurus. But Yeah, it's moving into Gemini now. So the Gemini is all about the mind and information and intellect and communication and talking and facts and details and the language that we use, the words that we use. So even the words that we use are going to go through a massive change throughout the next, what's 5 years or so, that Uranus is in Gemini.
Mhm.
We might see a lot of changes in education as well, and the way that people are taught in schools. There may be massive shifts and changes in migration in education too, moving from the public schools to private or to homeschool, because Gemini
Mhm.
is equated to early education, elementary level education and understanding. It's basic knowledge or basic information that we are receiving. So, that might get disjointed and restructured. So even like our social apps are like text messaging and DMs, and how the tools, the electronic tools in which we use to connect with one another will go through a huge shift and change. I mean, I also think that Uranus and Gemini is a very kind of psychic time, because Uranus is creating these sort of electrical connections in the ethers for us to communicate with each other more frequently. And I think it's going to get to a point where we're just sending each other mental messages and
I've
like
been feeling that.
notes.
I've been feeling that, or at least tuning in. It's like, oh, I've just thought of this person, and then they've just, that's happening more and more frequently.
Yeah,
Me anyway.
absolutely. Yeah. Um, but also Uranus and Gemini, in the astrological community, what we talk about the most is the fact that every time Uranus has entered Gemini, there's been some kind of unrest. There's some sort of social unrest that happens. Wars, uh, more rallying and activism. Civil War was one of the Uranus and Gemini periods. And even just this week, we've got quite
Mhm.
large aspects coming in that equate to um, a lot of unrest, a lot of civil unrest. So that's
Well,
just going to continue on the rest of the year.
because right now, what's happening, I mean, if for anyone tuning in the future, is currently Los Angeles, there's a lot of protests going on because of very aggressive, stringent immigration enforcement through ICE officials. And so the people of LA are protesting, and there are the military have been called in, and all of this kind of stuff is happening right now, just down the road from us in Los Angeles. So it's quite unsettling. So yeah, and this really speaks to like a lot of what you've just introduced. And yeah, and you were saying some aspects and transits that are coming up that kind of describe what's going on now, or reflect, mirror what's going on now.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily to fear monger or anything like that. And I think that astrology can certainly have that effect. Um, no, this is just, there's a lot of like very strong planetary alignments that are going on. And really, what astrology helps us to do is just to map out what happened in the past. And
Mhm.
then we like, look, oh, okay, so every single time Uranus has gone into Gemini, there's been like a civil war, there's been massive protests, there's been like not just in this country, but all over. So, there's just, there might be a pattern here, and we're
Mhm.
just reading patterns at
Mhm.
the end of the day. So yeah,
And all science is a kind of methodology of pattern recognition in
right, yeah,
any.
it's an
So
observable science. So we're just observing the patterns, equating them. It's not a fact, right? And also, what comes into play is the question of free will, whether or not we have the freedom to make a choice, to choose a destined path for ourselves. And that's where I think we get into the the awareness of like the multiple different layers of each aspect that can happen. There's
Mhm.
good, there's bad, there's in between, there's neutral, there's all sorts of variations uh, for these patterns to come about. And we can certainly make a lot of predictions, just it's just an educated guess, you know, like, oh, this
Mhm.
has happened this way multiple different times. I'm going to go ahead and make an educated guess that it will
Mhm.
probably happen again, because
Yeah.
we're humans and we don't often learn from our mistakes. We tend to perpetually continue to make them, hoping for another outcome, which I think is just called crazy, right? That's what we
Yeah,
call
isn't that what Einstein said, the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a new outcome, which I'm
it.
sure we're all guilty of. But because I love what you're saying there, because it's these patterns and the different ways that the patterns can express.
Right.
And like one of the ways that I've been really thinking about it as well is how consciousness evolves. So consciousness back in the 1800s, for instance, when Pluto was last in Aquarius, and consciousness now is very different.
Mm,
And so so these patterns are going to manifest and emerge differently. And then, of course, on an individual level, like you said, it's like, how are we choosing to respond to these events that, however they're unfolding in our personal lives, and then how are we choosing to respond to them as we witness in the collective? What's going on? Do we want to, are we kind of being triggered and activated into increased polarization, which is what's happening, and which is I don't want to, which is, I feel like, the easy way of navigating this. It's like bad, good. And yes, I'm looking at what's going on in LA right now, and it's, you know, it's really, yeah, it's alarming. And
mhm,
to stay in a space of, okay, um, how can I navigate this um, without falling into this versus that? But that's my own personal kind of, suggesting this for other people. But, it's just a way that, that's how my consciousness is processing and navigating this time.
mm.
Um, uh, so my next question was, yeah, or this next invitation to you was to, yeah, to just carry on speaking to the aspects that are kind of more
Mm,
immediately unfolding,
mm,
that are
mhm.
mirroring or foretelling what's happening.
Well, since it's June and this this is the month where gets pretty activated until the eclipse season in the fall. Um,
Mhm.
so this is where there's a lot of, well, this month and next month, part of it really just rolls into July. But this month, I mean, even in 2 days, I think it is we've got Mars squaring Uranus, Jupiter squaring Saturn, Jupiter squaring Neptune. And um, when when there's aspects being made to these outer, so the outer planets are anything beyond Saturn, which are the
Mhm.
modern planets that we've just discovered in the last couple centuries. Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, like I mentioned earlier, these are the slower moving generational planets. So when anything touches these planets or there's aspects being made to them, then that shows larger shifts and changes for collective. The personal planets, Venus, Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, to let's Jupiter's like on the precipice. Saturn is also on the precipice. The sun and the moon, those are very internal. Those are our own personal experiences and an individual level. um, of course they can affect otherworldly things like stock markets, things like that. But it's still very on the personal. And so going back to Mars squaring Uranus, for instance, Mars, which is the planet of force and fight and conflict and confrontation, really. Um, makes a hard aspect to one of the generational planets, and there's an action being taken. Something is going to happen. Mars also is associated a lot of times with the masculine or men. And it being in Leo is a strong connection to the military, Mars, Martian militarization.
We're seeing that right now.
Yes. Squaring Uranus, which is the planet of community, right? Or the communal collective. It's the collective. So, you know, these hard aspects to one another are adjustment periods, shifts, things where we need to make change and need to address something very real and crucial. You know, is coming into, oh man, it's just basically unrest. And then a repercussion of that unrest being harder lines being drawn, harder boundaries, whether up against from literal law and the legal system, and or in our own personal lives, how it equates. Which, so when I talk about astrology transits, I like to jump back and forth for like the collective and then personal, because you know, not everyone is going to have the same experience as the collective is having. So on a personal level, for instance, Mars squaring Uranus can come up or look like like a trigger or a tension point between your actions and how you feel amongst your friends or community. Or it can be your sense of purpose or valor, or how you initiate and activate your own energy or conflict resolution with that of your friends or friend group or community. So there could be like shifts or rifts between friends with Mars square Uranus, or there could be cutting points, because Mars is also cutting, sharp. It's associated with knives and anything sharp. Could be like, well, then there's a lot of like friend groups being cut in half or being cut in different ways. And then, oh gosh, yeah.
So
Saturn.
when does Mars square Uranus? Just so, yeah, so when that's happening in 2 days, did you say?
Yeah, on June 15th. So
okay.
it's on June 15th. And then on June 15th, Jupiter, the planet of beliefs, teachers, gurus, is squaring Saturn, which is the planet of the authority and like time and structure and systems. So I think that's an interesting juxtaposition between these two heavenly bodies that equate to essentially like teachers and gurus and leaders or thought leaders, philosophers, going up against the rule and law and order. So, but it might be a good thing though. It might actually come out through us seeing more communication, more thought leaders expressing deeply impactful messaging, stern messages, strong messages, reprimanding, you know, what's happening, and then also back and forth, seeing it, the arguments happen. And also Jupiter just entered Cancer recently. Yay!
A good transit, a benevolent transit, we might say, amidst all of the intensity of it all.
Yeah, absolutely. Bringing in more compassion, empathy, wisdom, emotional intelligence as well. So going back again to the Jupiter archetype of being, well, Jupiter is Zeus, right? Jupiter is the god of the gods. Jupiter is the leader of the pantheon. And so, or the wise one. And when Jupiter enters Cancer, which is the sign of nurturance, home, domesticity, family, roots, lineage. There's more of an awareness, or maybe an understanding of our ancestors, where we came from, the wisdom of the ancestors coming out. Um, yeah, I'm excited for that, because I've really been waiting to be inspired by good, wise, succinct, compassionate words. I feel like we have lost a lot of leaders. We've lost a lot of very impactful speakers and communicators, and or the information is just disseminated and watered down through all of these various social media outlets, right? Too, it's really hard to find information, because it's just like there's numerous outlets now to put information out, whereas there used to just be
And it's
one
so
or two.
bite-sized and disposable, so you don't fully integrate what's going on, what you're reading or listening to or watching.
Yeah, so I think there's much more intentional ways of putting out information. I've also been noticing as well, with Jupiter moving into Cancer, and also maybe Neptune going into Aries, is this rise back, this coming back of poetry and the use of poetry to share and communicate and emote with words in a way that gets to the core of the emotional experience that each individual is having. Noticing that, yeah, that's an outlet that's growing for many people as a form of expression, that because it feels like just a meme doesn't really cut it. Like, we just can't be just communicating in memes all day. It's fun, but at the same time, it's not really, we need more depth, I think, is what it boils down to. And Jupiter in Cancer helps that.
Yeah. Yes, I'm definitely resourcing my nervous system astrologically from the Jupiter and Cancer transit. And so another thing I wanted to speak to for people kind of watching this and who maybe not so well versed in astrology, and it's really not about good and bad in this way, because this is an unfolding of a much larger narrative that we're a part of. And even though right now it feels like, oh yeah, this doesn't feel good and this feels intense and what's happening is not good. Objectively, it's not good. And at the same time, when we're looking at it from an astrological lens, these planetary archetypes, yes, they represent certain energies, certain transpersonal energies that affect not just our human experience, but nature as well, and we are not separate from, but, we've created this false separation. So could you speak to a little bit about how to kind of conceptually navigate what we're speaking to, not from a lens of, oh, Uranus means chaos and that's terrible, and Mars is a planet of war, and that's moving into Gemini, which is, no, not Mars. No, sorry, that's in my natal chart, Mars and Gemini. Sorry. My natal chart is Mars and Gemini. Yeah, just not getting too bogged down in the kind of good versus bad, in the kind of binaries of these planetary archetypes.
Yeah, I love that question, because whenever I do like group sessions or workshops and engage with people who are just learning about astrology, certainly those terms come up: good or bad. Is this good? Is that good? Does that mean it's good? Does it mean it's a bad thing? And my response is always, I don't know. Is it? You tell me. What does that mean for you? And what does that concept mean for you? Is that a good thing for you, or is that a bad thing for you? I try not to use the terms good or bad. The only ways I will use those terms is when it relates to Either it's life affirming or it's not. Either it is promoting wellness and longevity, or it's not. Right. I think that's could be like kind of objective, where yes, getting hurt, dying is bad. Having health and wellness is good. Those I think are can't really argue that. But in terms of like war and chaos, things like that, it's really up to the individual. What does that mean to you? What does war mean to you? And also what has that concept, how has it played a role in your life? So, I can't tell you if it's good or bad. Maybe an army general will have a different perspective on war, and I'll have to see it differently for them in their chart versus someone who has been displaced or experienced generations of trauma from war. That then I'll have to address that Mars energy differently. So it's very individualized, and I think it all just comes back to internalizing that question of what is good or bad. And if you have a reaction or a knee-jerk reaction to say that something is good or bad, then just pausing for a moment and questioning, okay, well then why though? Why is this good in my perspective, or why is this bad? And then developing your own personal story around that. But astrology itself is neutral, like I mentioned before. Astrology is just a picture with a bunch of symbols on it. It exists there whether we observe it or not. The stars are moving, the planets are moving every day, whether we observe it or not. It's our own observational biases that we place these labels on them being good or bad. So, and also too, chaos is, I think our relationship to the term chaos is changing now that we've also been unearthing or integrating more ancient wisdom within our belief systems around what chaos is. And it's traditionally the feminine. It's a feminine process of evolution and rebirth and regeneration. So, like chaos, the god, or that Uranus is named after, was born, what I think birthed, I can't remember the story now, but maybe you'll remember, but chaos, was it Gaia and chaos?
Yeah, Gaia, chaos, no, wasn't it Chaos and Gaia who got together and birthed? I can't remember what they birthed.
Here, now I'm gonna look it up. They birthed, from chaos, the three fundamental entities of the universe emerged, which is Gaia, Tartarus, or the underworld, and Eros, which is desire.
And the life force, yeah. And chaos is, I mean, so it's this kind of primordial energy. And it is also, when you, and from the kind of Indian cosmology and cosmogony, Vedic and Tantric, Kali represents that energy of chaos, the goddess Kali. And she, and it is, she's kind of, I mean, she has so much, there's so much you could speak to about Kali, but she is essentially, she's removing in our personal lives, and she's removing things that are no longer relevant, but that we have maybe become attached to, and then that creates a chaotic experience. And right now we could be looking at what's going on in the world. It's like, it doesn't feel like what's no longer irrelevant is being removed. It feels like the irrelevant is taking center stage, but it's this chaotic energy that precedes big change. And we're kind of in this turbulent gravitational field of something that, we're moving into like a new time. And
Mhm.
so it is chaotic, and a lot of corruption is being revealed as we see an abuse of power
Mhm.
through force. And a lot of the things that I've been speaking to in my own work with my clients and my and in the spaces outside Luna Arcana that I work with clients in groups is looking at power versus force. And I'm actually borrowing that from the author David Hawkins, who wrote a book of the same name. But true power is different and wholly distinct from force. And what we're seeing right now is force, show of force,
Mhm.
as a kind of facade for power. Um, and astrologically, can you speak to that, like that, the kind of the energies, the energetics of that? Because that I know that that's playing out.
Well, yeah, and when you when you dig into astrology and like become astrologically minded, you tend to see everything sort of categorized by the planets and the signs. And, you know, even those two words, those two terms, force versus power, astrologically would equate to power being Pluto and force being Mars. They're different. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and they have different functions and they move differently and are used and utilized in different ways. Um, but going to, you know, the chaos, the chaotic nature that we're in currently is also a time that breeds infinite potential, which is the what chaos brings. It's the, you know, that primordial soup of the unknown, of what could happen when there is a mix of energies getting chaotically displaced. You know, there's people who can navigate it really well and see opportunity in that chaos, and those are the people that will, you know, make moves during the chaotic time to, I don't know, do whatever agenda that they may have. It's definitely happened throughout history. Civil unrest, whenever there's a vacuum, right,
Mm-hmm.
of power, then there is potential for any the most sort of magnetic, powerful individual to utilize that void and to implement their own needs. So, you know, I think just even strategically speaking, where we are at right now, we have to be extremely careful with um, acknowledging where who is taking advantage of the chaotic nature of what's happening right now, and to not place a lot of faith in just any individual for the purpose of creating order and a desire for order. You know, we've seen that also with many revolutions throughout history. It's kind of a tried and true method, especially Russia is a really great example. During their revolution, created a vacuum, and then now, you know, they thought what they thought was like a beautiful sort of new socialist democratic um, a government emerging turned into like a very authoritarian communist regime. um, but yeah, in terms of like that Plutonian power versus force and how to utilize those energies to, I guess, be mindful of where you are putting your energy. Hmm. When I think of the term power, it feels confident. Um,
Mm-hmm. There's an embodiment.
yeah, yeah, it's a confidence and a lack of need to enforce
Yeah.
the self or
Mm-hmm.
impose the self. It's, yeah, embodiment is a really great way of saying that. Um, but I guess just, yeah, maintaining confidence and composure in the face of adversity is what helps to breed more empowerment from within.
because force and coercion, as we're seeing, is, to me, is hiding an inherent powerlessness.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And that is a, you know, that's a kind of unmasking of what we have been told power is.
Mm.
And I feel like, you know, we're seeing that right now, even though I'm just speaking directly to what's happening in Los Angeles right now.
Mm.
And it's a show of force and a show of aggression, because to mask and hide an inherent very just a really flimsy, weak core where there is no power.
Right.
I feel that we've been seeing that in our structures of government, not just right now, but
Mm-hmm.
at least since 2020, but way before that, really.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of, well, this talking about this reminds me of the Emperor card in the tarot. And if you read tarot or look into the archetypes of tarot, the Emperor is associated with Aries, the ram. And even if we think about the role of what an emperor is, a true leader will rule with confidence without needing to affirm their power, because it's already acknowledged and known. But when we have, and if you read reversals in tarot, the reversal of the emperor, like when it's turned upside down, is that lack of feeling empowered from within, and then like crying, having tantrums, yelling, screaming, trying to, create power through fear or coercion, like you mentioned, or manipulation, tactics that implement, a false sense of power within that identity. Um, and again, it all comes from and stems from that kind of core wound of like lack of confidence, in my opinion. Because when you do lack that, then you kind of feel like you have to seek that sense of power from outside of yourself, whether it's through like egoic needs of like pompousness or money as a source of power, or like sex as a source of power, uh,
Possessions, all these, yeah.
possession, ownership, which again, there's like, all these themes can be utilized in ways that are empowering through for any individual journey, but just archetypally speaking and what's going on right now, I think it's very obvious when there's a leader who is making decisions from a source of insecurity. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I feel like we've seen that really over and over again, and now it's the apex of it. Like I use the analogy of the wolf is no longer in sheep's clothing.
Hmm.
And I love wolves. But it's like it's here, we see it.
Mm-hmm.
And and also that's another Plutonian quality as well, of things being revealed, of
Mm-hmm.
really, like, what we're seeing now is not just, it didn't just arrive in a vacuum. It's a product of what has come before.
Mm-hmm.
And the revelation of that, the seeing of that, how the corrupt systems have given birth to this apex of force, a corrupt power, misuse of power,
Mm-hmm.
the emperor upside down. um and uh and and one thing I was just thinking about as you were speaking was just going back to this time of chaos, and how it has this energy, this, at the center of chaos is kind of a still potent space,
Mm-hmm.
and how we can tap into that in our own selves, in our own individual selves, because like you said, you know, there are kind of non-life affirming opportunists in times of chaos who want to then use that energy to direct in not so, you know, not so well-meaning ways. So if we're able to tap into our own, you know, like you said, we have lost this collectively, you know, there are many individuals who haven't, but collectively, this collective cultural wound of being displaced from our own inherent power that isn't reflected through possessions and this and that, which, you know, if they're taken away, then our power's gone. But like rooting into that inherent sense of power that can't be taken away, you know, perhaps this is what this kind of time of chaos is, a way that we can work with this energy of chaos to kind of turn within to our source of power and really root into that and see how that wants to move through us, so that we are then less inclined to go off in this direction and that direction, or this new leader is emerging, let me follow them, or that new political party is emerging, let me follow them, and just drop into that, our inner upturned emperor.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, for me, that's like feeling like a real invitation during this time of chaos. And what else do you want to share before? Because I was like to Evelyn before we started, we'll keep it to 45 minutes. We won't go over an hour, but when Evelyn and I get going. So we won't, yeah, just to kind of start winding. Is there anything else that you want to speak to about this time and about the astrology and about how we can individually move through this time?
Mm-hmm. I think that, I guess maybe it's not even really related to astrology necessarily, but one thing that I'm noticing is, well, okay, Jupiter moving into Cancer, right? The emotional intelligence and the wisdom of our feelings and our emotions and how it moves through the body and how it affects us. I think that becoming more self-aware in terms of how you're feeling, whether it's angry or sad or happy or joyful, around any given topic or circumstance. It's just being in that space of observation rather than reactivity, because that's what has gotten us where we are is the reactivity to our emotions and what comes up. Emotions are wonderful things. They're great. They're information. That's all it is information. And I think through this Jupiter Cancer cycle, we'll be able to expand and broaden our perspective on what emotions are doing for us, and also sensitivities. That will help us to become more aware and cognizant how to reframe our worldviews. And that means just taking a step back. If you're getting really upset, if you're getting really frustrated, if you're having, these thoughts of harm to self or others, to, okay, maybe there's something I need to address in terms of why this is coming up, understand it, move through it, and then make a decision afterwards. So taking a beat once in a while. Also too, I think that in our generation, and also I guess since the last World War that we had, we've been quite insulated from the world's problems. And I think that we've got a bit of a voyeuristic mindset when it comes to taking, in terms of like political change. And it's something to consider as well, is like how fortified are we to have actual political unrest in front of our faces, like in real life, rather than on a screen, which is what we're so used to. Being able to move through sort of difficult, traumatic, upsetting things that we've never really had to experience before. Being right with your body in those moments and connected to your body and how you're feeling may make or break your path forward in life. I mean, I don't know, I don't mean to sound dire, but astrologically speaking, this is it, guys. Like, this is it. This is it. This is the thing that we've all been griping about, talking about. We need change. Oh, we're frustrated, we're upset, we're annoyed with the government. Oh, we hate how things are. You know, we've been ad nauseum discussing how things need to change, and it is here. The time has come, and to a certain extent, we could argue that we needed the person that is in the position that he's in right now in order to elicit these changes, or, you know,
who
to
in himself
see,
is very archetypal in nature, but that's a conversation
right,
for a whole different podcast.
right, like putting the weight over in a certain extremism, right, which is like how things will shift and alter in our level of consciousness for our collective right now. It could change it, you know, things could, we could evolve peacefully. That is real. It is possible. And
if we believe in that possibility,
yes,
if we entertain that could be possible.
yes, absolutely. But yeah, I guess being mindful of the body, your breath, how you're feeling, how you're breathing. If you're holding your breath, that's a opportunity to remember, oh, okay, I have to come back, feel what I'm feeling, and then understand it, and then make a decision from there.
And I think that is speaking to what we were just talking about with power, true power. That is the kind of central point of potential in the middle, you know, in the center of the chaotic energy of, you know, what you've just described there of this coming back to the breath, coming back to our experience in this moment, what's going on in the body, being right with the body. And I know that we both do this in our own work and practice as well. And it's, so I think that is reclaiming our power from that place. And we become less and less susceptible then to energies of manipulation and propaganda and all the rest of it that's flying around, and misinformation and all that kind of stuff, because we can check in with ourselves and, like you say, take a beat, take a moment. So yeah, so much more to say. Do you want to speak to anything else before we close?
I think that's it. I think, yeah, that's really what I wanted to say for the most part, was just don't lock your knees and don't forget to breathe.
Yeah, keep breathing. We breathe through it. Yes. And so I'm going to leave links for all of the ways that you can connect further with Evelyn in the show notes thing at the bottom of the screen. But Evelyn, just for you to speak to, like, where is the best place for people to find you, sign up to a newsletter? If you're still on Instagram, aren't you? So on Instagram, all of these kinds of things.
You can find me on Instagram at evelyn.zuel. My website is themysticparlor.com. You can book a reading with me on there. I also write weekly daily breakdowns of each day astrologically on Magic of Eyes website, which is a really beautiful astrological planner. And I send out a weekly email as well. So if you want to sign up to my email list on themysticparlor.com, then you'll receive a little blurb from me on a weekly basis, or sometimes if I forget or don't feel like it, then every other week.
I really recommend signing up to Evelyn's newsletter. I don't tune into a lot of astrologers these days, just because it's like, oh, lot. But Evelyn is one that I still do. And yeah, so I highly recommend signing up for her newsletter. And as I said, I'll leave all the links below. And yeah, maybe we'll go and, we'll see where we're at this time next year and just be like, okay, we were talking about that this time last year. Where are we at now? What's going on?
Ooh,
And
yeah.
I'd love to hear from everyone, especially people who are non-astrology people who've watched this, and just see what it's maybe kindled in you. And yeah, and thanks for tuning in. Thanks, Evelyn.
Thank you,
Um,
Rohini, for having me.
and yeah, and until our next Luna Arcana transmission, thanks everyone. Bye.